sea of red, it's time for another Fireside Chat, the official podcast of Flames fans. It's go time!
Well, the Calgary Flames fell to the Minnesota Wild tonight, and they now have a 120-minute goal drought. I'm Dan alongside Matt, and Matt, I guess we got to cover this week, don't we?
Yeah, well, it was a few games this week. Wouldn't say that they were necessarily all good, but yeah, well, it is what it is.
First game of the week was the Calgary Flames hosting the Columbus Blue Jackets. This was Kadri's 1,000th game. The Flames did the pregame ceremony for him, and Kadri managed to get a goal in his 1,000th game, which I thought was kind of cool, as the Flames managed to find a way to win 5-1 over the Blue Jackets. What were your thoughts here?
I thought that Jet Greaves was not very good in net for Columbus. If Merlitskins was in net, probably would have only scored 2 or 3 of those goals, but...
I mean, Calgary took 26 shots and scored on 5 of them. The Blue Jackets took 43 shots and scored on 1 of them.
Yeah, like it was very much one of those where the goalie was bad, and the Flames were actually able to capitalize, and they got the 2 points.
Yeah, and if they're going to get 2 points, this is the one to get them in. I'm glad to see Kadri getting a point of any kind, but especially a goal in his 1,000th game. Kind of what I expected from these two teams. Not a great game to watch, but the Flames got 2 points.
Yeah, and enough players were getting contributions on the board. Wasn't just one guy going off and having a great show. Everybody was chipping in.
Goals from Frost, Coleman, Kadri, Klapka, and Backlund, and assists from Huberdeau, Coronado, Hanley, Honzig, Farabee, Anderson, and even Kuznetsov getting his first NHL point.
Yeah, so it was a full team effort in this one, and then that was it for contributions this week.
And then, speaking of team efforts,
Yep.
the Blue Jackets leave, the Chicago Blackhawks come to the Dome, and this was the Connor Bedard show. The Chicago Blackhawks get 4-0 win over the Flames. Bedard gets 4 points as the Flames get shut out. 2 goals from Bertuzzi, 1 from Burakovsky, 1 from Bedard, and Bedard got assists on all the goals that weren't his. You and I were at this game. This reminded me of like playing the Minnesota Wild from the early 2000s when it was just like dump and chase trap hockey.
Yeah, it was very low event, especially from the Flames POV. They were managing to get quite a large number of shots on Spencer Knight, but there was nothing that was overly onerous on him. And when you give that many glorious chances to Bedard and co, you're not going to do well.
No, and there's some really, you and I were sitting there watching this game, and there was some really interesting, I guess, I'll use the word interesting, moments. There was a couple times they gave the puck right to Bedard, big turnovers or botched passes right to Connor Bedard.
Yeah, it's like the one guy on the ice for the other team. The rest of the Blackhawks is pretty terrible, but Bedard is good. And
I haven't even heard, you and I were looking at the roster for the game. I haven't even heard of most of these guys.
Yeah, it's other than veterans like Bertuzzi and Foligno, there's...
Teravainen.
Yeah, there's a few guys that, are noteworthy just because they were high picks, but beyond that, it's okay, this is a player in the NHL, cool. Who are you? What do you do?
A man in the NHL with this name.
Yes.
So not a great game there. The Flames get shut out, and then they go on the first half of a road trip to Minnesota on Sunday night. We're recording just after. The Flames get 36 shots on goal in this one as they face a backup goaltender. Also, their backup goaltender in net here. And it was Jesper Wallstad versus Dustin Cooley, and the Flames still can't get on the board, getting shut out 2-0. What a boring game.
Yeah, once again, lots of perimeter shots. They did have a few chances in this one. A goal that was called back due to too many men on the ice. and that's about it. Like, Cooley made a few good saves. He wasn't really tested often. You allowed a partial break to
He keeps looking good, though. Like, every time he's in, he's looking good.
Yeah. Wild didn't really generate much of anything in the game. They got the one goal off a defensive breakdown, and were able to keep the Flames to the outside for the rest of the game, burn the clock, and get the empty netter.
You know, that Chicago game, I was surprised. We had 3 fights in one game from 2 teams that really don't have any feelings about each other. I wasn't sure if that would spill over to this Minnesota game. Like, I wasn't sure if it was just frustration by the Flames, but I was half expecting a much more physical game here.
Yeah, and the overall effort level was not very good. I was actually having a little bit of issues with Sportsnet Plus and Shaw and Rogers to actually even watch the game, which took me until about halfway through the second period. I started from the beginning, but and I feel like I gave more of an effort just trying to watch the game than the team did playing it at times. And this, for a team that's trying to salvage their season, there was no real sacrifice by any of the players to go that extra step.
Yeah, I mean, we heard Huska after the Chicago game kind of, I guess, I don't want to say chastise his team, but just he said he wasn't happy with it. And I can't imagine we haven't heard the coach's comments yet, but I can't imagine that he's happy with this Wild game either.
Yeah. And when the Toronto game happened a couple weeks ago, like I had said that the Flames would need to go 11-6, including that Toronto game, between now, or then, and the end of November. And for the rest of the schedule to the end of the month, they have to actually go 8-1-1 to hit that 11-6, and that's just being good enough to kind of be alive-ish at the end of the month. And it's like when you're needing pretty much like an 8-game winning streak just to get back into, okay, we're not dead yet. Not a good place for this team.
Well, right now, after 16 games, the Flames have 4 wins, 10 losses, and 2 overtime losses for a total of 10 points. Puts them squarely at the bottom of the league. St. Louis right above them at 13. And then 14 points is Nashville, tied in the East with Buffalo and Columbus. So the Flames are, I would say, officially having a rotten start.
Actually, to pile on, that was actually game number 17, so they're 4-11-2.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I hadn't refreshed this since the game finished. So 4-11-2.
Yeah.
Still 10 points, though.
Yeah, realistically, the team would need to go 43-22, I think, the rest of the way in order for them to just match what the Flames did last year. Which, that's a tall order to win more than half of your remaining schedule when you're nearly 20 games in.
Yeah, at first we thought this could be a bad start. And could the Flames still have a year like St. Louis where they do everything after Christmas? Sure. Is it likely? No. I think at this point, 20 games in having 10 points, or 17 games in having 10 points, these guys are done. Yeah,
the season's over. The playoffs.
We talked about this
happening.
last week. It's time to embrace this rebuild.
Yeah, it's done. There is no coming back from this. Again, unless you go on you win 15 of 18 type streak, that's about the only way that there would still be a pulse left in this team. And when you only win 4 out of 17, that's not happening.
Well, and if they were able to win, that many, I don't think they'd be in this position.
No. And it's not like most games they're getting just beat a little bit. usually the games are like a complete mismatch, like the Chicago game. Even the Minnesota game, like, we didn't really generate a ton of scoring chances in that one, and even though it was only a 1-0 game until the empty netter, like, it felt like Minnesota was just basically in control of the game and was just riding it till, the end buzzer.
I think that's fair. Well, let's talk about defensemen. There's been some changes to defense this week. We did not see Kevin Ball in the Chicago game. He was out. He did not play at all, so Kuznetsov has been called up, as we talked about before the Columbus game. Ball was back against Minnesota, but now Zane Parekh is out week to week, and Mirmanov has been recalled. So quite a change to the defense. So as of now, Kuznetsov is in the lineup, Ball is in the lineup, and Parekh is out of the lineup week to week. So let's go through these guys one at a time. Matt, thoughts on Kuznetsov so far?
Very solid and steady number 5-6 defenseman,
which is what he projects to be.
Yeah, like, he never had a high offensive ceiling. He was just a big, physical, defensive defenseman when we drafted him in the second round. He has basically hit all the markers that he needs to along the way, and he's showing that he is NHL ready. And, honestly, at this point, I feel that it's his spot to lose in the lineup. And, guys like Bean, Hanley, Mirmanov, and Bahal are all on the, I would go with Kuznetsov over any of those guys instead.
Yeah, and with the season, I think, as we talked about, finally being over, why not try the young guys, right? Like, they're not gonna lose anything here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think definitely bring those guys up. There was some criticism when the Flames did this about why Kuznetsov, why not a guy like Hunter Brstavich or some of the other people that the Flames want to see. I wouldn't have brought Brstavich up, honestly, because I think, and you and I have talked a lot about this in the past, I think you need to bring up a guy and put him in the position you expect him to be in the NHL. Like, Brstavich is not going to be 5'6", so he gets more out of development, staying in the A, playing, 1-2 minutes. But I do question, I guess, where this puts some guys in the depth chart, like some of their older guys, like Emile Poirier.
Yeah, well, it's one of those where Poirier is not looking like he has an NHL future. Etienne Morin got demoted to the ECHL and has not played well enough to even be in the lineup in the AHL. And, guys like Grushnikov, much like Kuznetsov, are more of a defensive defenseman. And if he gets recalled down the road, he will be, your number 5-6 guy. And Kuznetsov is a good number 5-6 candidate, so it made sense to bring him to be on the third pair. I think with Brstavich, you probably don't see him in the NHL until Anderson gets dealt, and he will probably just slot into Anderson's spot on the lineup. And
yeah, I agree.
Go from there.
Yeah, I think I personally think Kuznetsov was the right call up for what they need. That 5'6", maybe even 7 guy. I mean, I don't know if he'll be in every night, but that kind of 5'6", 7 guy, you got to push him. You got to see what he's got, and now's the time.
Well, it's not like any of the other guys are doing anything on the offensive side of the puck with any note. And
they have enough offensive defensemen.
And they also know what each of those guys are, where Kuznetsov might become a very effective shutdown defensive defenseman. And if he gets the road to be able to learn how to be a good shutdown player, that would be a good thing for the team down the road. And the only way to do that is to be in the NHL playing against NHLers.
Yep. No, I totally agree. And then there was some dispute this week from fans about should Mirmanov have been recalled. My thought to this is yes, as long as he's going to be 7. Like, if you're bringing up a guy to play every night, it's not Miramanov. We've already seen that. That's why he was sent down. If you're just bringing up an extra body for the road trip, sure, why not?
Yeah. He, to me, is basically Dryden Hunt. You need a body just to be there in case of, like, a game day injury and you need somebody to slot in last minute. Sure. Otherwise, he's upstairs enjoying the popcorn and then going home.
Yeah. I mean, he'll come back on the jet with the Flames probably and then just rejoin the Wranglers when they get here. I don't even see him getting into a game unless there's an issue.
Exactly.
Zane Parekh, injured week to week now, opens up an interesting spot for Kuznetsov or somebody else there. You and I have talked a little bit about how we think that Zane Parekh is probably not quite NHL ready, but far too good for the OHL. This is going to be kind of interesting because according to Ryan Pike on Twitter, Zane Parekh would be eligible when he comes back from this injury for a AHL conditioning stint, which means he could be down there for about 2 weeks when he comes back, even though he's underage.
Yeah, and, one of the concerns that we brought up has been the lack of physical size to Parekh, and he is fairly skinny out there, and you saw a larger veteran forward in Foligno hit him, and what was a fairly clean body check into the boards, and it was enough to hurt Parech's shoulder, and he'll be out for, probably 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks. And, like we saw similar things like when Shillington first came up, because physically they were fairly similarly sized. And, that will be one of the things that Parech's going to have to overcome in the following off seasons, is bulking up so that way he can take a hit like that without getting hurt. And, being able to also deliver body checks without just basically bouncing off of the guys.
At this point, I'm kind of debating how much, even when Parekh is healthy this year, that you want to be playing him. Like, I'm wondering if you maybe play him once a week, maybe twice a week, and then just have him working in the gym.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that, like, when he comes back, you send him to the World Juniors after the conditioning stint, because he'll probably be back around the beginning of December, have him in the AHL till basically Christmas, have him go to the World Juniors, then come back, and depending on how his World Juniors go, either have him play up here, or if the team's a tire fire and you'd like him to, regain some confidence, go back to juniors.
I don't think he can go back to juniors.
Yes, he can. Yeah, he can. At any point, you can reassign him to juniors. You just can't recall him at any point.
Okay, interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, I think Parekh is definitely an interesting prospect, but this is you and I have talked about this a long time, going all the way back to the Sam Bennett days, about how just because a guy is, your top pick doesn't necessarily mean he should be in the NHL the next year. And I think this is a great case study of that, right? Is Parekh should not be in the NHL right now.
No.
And he is, and it's causing difficulty. And what if this shoulder injury is going to be nagging for the rest of his career? Like, this is, the Flames are doing what they have to do. They can't send him to the A. That's where he should be. But I think next year with the rules changing, I would not be surprised if Parekh spends next year in the American League.
Yes, I agree.
He's not going to be a top 4 guy next year. I think he'd be better to be a 1-2 in the American League next year. This just, I don't know. He's looked okay. He hasn't looked great. I think we know that Parekh also needs to work on parts of his defensive game, and that's the place to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But, I will say Braden Pahal in the lineup last couple of games, I thought, we were kind of surprised by him last year. Like, he looked pretty good last year. We didn't know what to expect coming into the season, but he looked pretty good last year. And I would say from what we've seen this year as well, I'm pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, same here.
I didn't know if that would continue or not, but, for a guy who's kind of a nobody, who's 26, I mean, is he a top 4? No, but, he's sort of like that Michael Stone-like guy where you can come in and you get consistent play every night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, solid number 6, 7 type guy that, it fits in the lineup anytime, anywhere, when you need him, and yeah.
Yep. That's a good, I think that's a good way to look at him. And then Jake Bean on the back, I still have not been impressed with. I think Joel Hanley, though, needs a call out as well for, again, what he is and a 34-year-old player. I think Joel Hanley's been pretty steady for the Flames.
Honestly, most of the players, both up front and on the back end, have been fairly solid overall in their individual games. It's just the main problem that the team has is just a complete talent deficit compared to everybody else. And, like a guy like, say, Kadri is playing perfectly good as a number 2 center. Problem is the Flames don't have a number 2 center. They need him to be the number 1 center because they don't have, that. So, and everybody's kind of...
We're working on it, Matt. If we keep losing, we'll get the number 1 center.
Yeah. It's just one of those where you gotta, everybody, if they were in the roles that they should be, are producing appropriately. It's just, not much you can do when everybody's up in the lineup way further than they should be.
Well, you're mentioning Kadri. Thursday night, there was a story that came out. Darren Dreger reported that Flames majority owner Murray Edwards has said that he has little interest in moving on from Kadri and even expressed his love for the team's core. And there's been a lot of talk online about that, and does that hinder the Flames rebuild? And what does that mean? And Matt, I want to throw this out to you. Do you think that moving Kadri and doing a rebuild are mutually exclusive? Like, does one need to have... or mutually inclusive? Do you need to do one for the other to happen?
No, and frankly, the Flames are coming by it honestly. They're playing as hard as they can, and they're still dead last. It doesn't matter if Kadri, Coleman, Anderson, etc. are on this team or not. They are equally going to miss the playoffs. The only difference is if you're wanting to capitalize on the potential assets that they would return in a trade to add that to your prospect pool and perhaps open up some money to go sign some free agents and, kind of rotate the team over a bit that way. You look at San Jose and how this past offseason they added some veteran depth. This team will need to spend money regardless to be above the cap floor. It's just one of those that you might as well capitalize on what you can move. And frankly, with Murray Edwards making those comments, it's well, if you say everybody's available, instantly your returns go way, way, way down.
Exactly.
So
and I'm not saying this is a negotiating move, but I can see, Conroy trying to milk this if he does want to move Kadri and say somebody, you know what? Look, the old man loves the guy. We'll give him to you, but you got to give me a deal I can take to Murray.
Yeah, exactly. No slapdash, here, we'll give you a second round pick and insert prospect here for your good player. No, give me a proper offer. Mm-hmm. There's only one guy like this available around the league. If you want him, you have to pay for him.
And, ownership also loved Iginla, right? I get that he loves Kadri, and I get that he loves core, and I like our core too. I mean, is it a core that's going to take us to Stanley Cup? No, but I think if we were to drop a top center into this core, I mean, it's not like Chicago where it's a bunch of nobodies. This is a pretty good core to build around. I get where Murray's coming from.
Yeah, and just because you might delete 2 or 3 pieces doesn't mean that you're deleting 9 or 10 pieces from this team. And guys are important, and even a player like Ryan Lomberg, as even though he's a depth player, that's still a core piece to this team in the locker room. And you might not necessarily want to move on from that piece, even though, he would be a tradable asset at the deadline. So it just needs to make sense one way or the other.
And, I think there's often things that we have loved, but, we've still been willing to part with, in life. And, I mean, okay, so he doesn't want to move Kadri. I don't think Kadri wants to move. Like, Kadri signed a long-term deal here. Might it happen? Sure, but this has been talked about for a number of seasons, and it hasn't happened. I still think that the most likely veteran forward to move is probably Coleman.
Yeah, and, you look at, it's a different situation than a couple of years ago, where you had guys like Lindholm, Hanifin, Tanev, Zadorov, that all were impending free agents, and they weren't going to re-sign. So, in that particular case, you needed to cash out just because of the fact that something is better than nothing. This is the opposite, where the team is so bad that nothing can help them.
And not just for those guys, did we need a cash out, but there was also a dressing room issue.
Oh, yeah.
We had to get guys out of here to change the culture.
Yes. And, this situation is, there is no way to go up from here.
Yeah.
So, if it makes sense to move people out to further their careers, guys like Coleman and Kadri have won the Stanley Cup before, they would prefer to be in a playoff hunt instead of being on Team 32. And it's one of those working with those players to see if they want to stay or if they actually want another chance at a championship. There will be, 15 plus teams in either case looking at those guys with interest. It just needs to make sense from both sides. Anderson, though, I feel much like a couple years ago that regardless, he'll be moved on.
And, Kadri he's 35. He has, 4 years left in this deal?
Three after this one.
This year and 3 more, yeah. And then Coleman has this year and next year. There's no urgency to move those guys either. If you don't move them this year because you don't get the right deal or Murray doesn't want to or whatever, even if, the Coleman deal was done the offseason or next year, I think that's okay too. And you and I talked about this with Anderson in the offseason. I'm okay if Kadri sticks around. You need good veterans to work with guys like Coronado and Farabee and, whoever they bring in. I think Kadri, for what he brings both, on the ice and off the ice, I think he's a good Flame.
Oh, for sure. And, to be honest, if the Flames were they had, another first or second line worth of talent and were competitive, there would be no rush to move any of these guys. And, as a fan, I am a fan of each of those players. It's also, when you're 32nd, job security on the team that you're on is not really high, regardless of who you are. Because no team is content. Even if you are, absolute dreadful crap, San Jose was a couple of years ago, where, what end of the hockey stick up is up? We don't know. Level bad.
Like the ringette stick, there is no blade.
Yes, it's one of those where, the job security for every player on the team, save Dustin Wolf, is not, set in stone. And, you have to maneuver people out of the lineup, bring young guys in, try them out. If they don't stick, move them on and, keep actually rotating the organization. And you can have placeholder veterans, what we acquired last year with Frost and Farabee. But, you also do need to rotate your roster around just to, try and improve. And this is not working.
No. And, at the same time, and I know there's a lot of talk about Murray's comments, Kadri just had his 1,000th game. What are you expecting Murray to say, right? Are you expecting Murray to come out and say, wow, this guy had 1,000 games. I wish we would have got rid of him sooner. As much as I get what fans are maybe complaining about, what are we expecting Murray to say here? This is a guy who's been a Flame for a while. The Flames invest a lot of money in. If nothing else, even if he is happy, I mean, what do you like? I didn't see the smoke that I think some people see here.
Well, and honestly, it's also showing Kadri a lot of respect as well.
It is.
Like, he went out of his way. He could have went and signed with the New York Islanders. We had basically equivalent deals, and he chose to come here. That is a big thing for a team like Calgary to get somebody like Kadri to actually want to be here. And to throw him or anybody else under the bus of, just because things are hard to, get the hell out of here, like, that's not fair to them or their decisions for coming here in the first place. And myself, like, I'm not pushing them out the door, but, if they want to pursue other things, be my guest.
But if they want to stay here, I want to keep them here. Like, if Kadri has said to Murray, I love Calgary, I want to stay in Calgary, I think you got to respect that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And Aginla, for the longest time, wanted to stay here until he didn't. And then we finally moved on from him, even though, like, realistically, the Flames probably should have moved on from him 2 or 3 or 4 years earlier, I mean. But, they gave deference to the player, and it is what it is. And in order to have success down the road, like, you need to be an organization where people actually want to come. And, like, if Calgary has that reputation of treating players fairly, like, when they are good, like, yes, they will have the draw of insert, name of players here, but, if they're also treating players with class and respect, that will also translate into, the decision-making process.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, guys look at how teams treat them and their families and all that. And I think, that says a lot about a team, too, in attracting free agents.
Well, you see, like, the Florida Panthers, for example, like, not only, like, are they a good team, but, they've treated their players enough where, a guy like Marchand re-signed, even though he was not really looking like he was going to, and Ekblad took a discount to stay, and, like, it's one of those situations where, yes, success breeds, a desire to be there, but, their management also goes out of the way to, treat their players well, too, and that's why, like, the whole roster basically re-bought in for this year.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think, like, we'll see what happens here. I think that if both sides want to get a deal done, Murray's love of Kadri isn't going to hinder anything. I think, if Kadri wants to leave and the Flames are willing to move, the Flames will be willing to move on from him, but I don't see the rush to move Kadri myself.
No, it just needs to grow organically one way or the other, and that will be one of the storylines over the next couple of months.
Matt, before we this is going to be a light week, so we have some mail here from one of our listeners, and a longtime listener, Al. Al, he's been at a lot of our events at the breweries and stuff. He wrote us an email this week, and he says, how does the dynamic work in practice? How to keep the veteran players motivated while developing new ones with a longer-term objective, rather than winning today? Particular game versus not particularly wanting a winning streak at the expense of compromising the draft pick. I can see the likes of Kadri taking the view that they've done enough to help the team. They want jam today and not tomorrow. So why don't I give some thoughts on what I think Al's getting at here. I think that the veteran players who are here probably know a few things. First off, a guy like Kadri is getting a better opportunity here than he would on a winning team. So I think part of the way that these guys are being motivated is, on the ice at least, hey, look at me, I'm getting that first-line center role. As you mentioned, he's not really a first-line center. I think a guy like Kadri who has won a cup, and a guy like Coleman, I think there is some buy-in of, I want to help the next guys come up too. Backlund, I think, is the same way. I want to help develop those young guys there. I think in practice, you're trying to get those guys to be the best versions of them. And that way also, if we do move on from them, hey, you're going to go somewhere that wants you because you're looking amazing. And And I think the Flames are doing a good job of not keeping those guys in the way of younger players. You know, like we're seeing Coleman as a third line winger this year, so guys like Coronado and Farabee can develop. You know, I think there's a desire to win, and I think even now I think the Flames are trying to win, but things aren't coming together for them. And I think that even the veteran guys are looking at this long term. If I'm here for 2, 3, 4 years, my family loves it here. It's a good city to be in. I like Calgary. I like the way they treat me. You know, it's almost an investment of their time. Of, you know what, if we're bad this year and I ride this through the bad, a guy like Kadri or Huberdeau, I want to be here when this team gets better. What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
Not every team can be good. And, you know, there are 30
only half the league can go to the playoffs.
Exactly. And, you know, the Flames were basically tied for a playoff spot last year and lost the tiebreaker. That happens. And it made perfect sense for the team to re-buy in with that group. And all of those players were intending on, you know, recapturing the magic from a year ago. Time causes all players that are over the age of 25 to slowly decline a little bit. And when your best players are all over the 28 to 30 age bracket, you know, and you have like 7 guys that are all declining a bit, it doesn't take much for the wheels to fall off the wagon. And, you know, it's possible for these guys to, like, continue to show the younger players, like, how Coleman and Backlund have taken Honzik on their wing and, you know, showing him the ropes of how to play effectively as a two-way player in the NHL. And, you know, just that level of professionalism. It doesn't mean that you necessarily need to keep those players. You just need to keep veteran players around.
Well, that's it. You need somebody in that role, but it doesn't have to be this collection of those veteran guys.
Yeah, and like you see that with San Jose, like a couple of years ago, they really bottomed out, traded off everything that wasn't stapled down, but have subsequently added guys like Toffoli, amongst others, to flesh out that lineup with some veterans to surround guys like Celebrini, so that way they can learn how to take that next step together as a group. And
well, even we talked about Chicago earlier. The only guys you know there are the veteran guys: Bertuzzi, Teravainen, right? A few of these guys, Sam Lafferty. Like, the only guys you really know there are the veteran guys.
Yeah, and like they will play there, and if they're free agents or you know, that kind of thing at the trade deadline, Chicago will probably end up trading them. And, you know, hit the reset button, go sign more vets in the offseason, and, you know, take the second or third round picks or whatever they get for those guys, and then, you know, shoot their shot at the draft. And the Flames, like, they already have plenty of draft picks, and if they can get 3, 4, 5 more with some of the veterans that they would move out, that would be a big benefit. And we're seeing a team like Utah, who basically cycled through trading veterans all the time, signing new people, trading them, signing new people, trading them, where they were getting 12, 14, 15 draft picks in a draft. And now they're one of the better teams in the Western Conference, and like one of the best up-and-coming teams. And Calgary kind of, in order to turn the corner, needs to get both the top-end picks like a McKenna, but also need to flesh that out with getting good second, third, fourth line players as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I can see what Al's asking as well about the motivation of these guys. And, you know, everyone wants to win. I mean, everyone's looking to win, but everyone's also, let's be honest, looking towards the next contract and next year. And, you know, you want to look as good as you can. And I think right now, if you're a veteran, if I'm the coach, if I'm the GM, I'm saying, look, if you don't want to be here, let me know and I'll move you out of here. If you do want to be here, because of either the hockey or the culture or both. I mean, you know, Calgary's a good city to live in. The players like to come here. The families like it here. The wives like it here. That's more important than I think we think about sometimes. It's easy to get in and out of. There's an international airport. Like, if you don't want to be here, we'll get you out of here. But like you said, there's only so many winning teams. And I think for, when you have kids, when you have a family, there's something to be said about stability too. That, you know what, it's a rotten year this year, but do I want to pick up the family and move, or are we going to stay here because the kids are in school? We like the city. I think there's a lot more that goes into these decisions than we might give credit for.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that, like, as you said, that, when this team in like 2 or 3 years is turning that corner, if they're still viable players, they can be a part of that upswinging team, much like Toffoli is with the San Jose Sharks. And, you can experience that youthful push for that, like their first playoff chance, and.
And let's be honest, a guy like Kadri has a Stanley Cup. If he leaves here and goes for another one, he gets another ring. He's not going to make more money. He already has a long-term deal. It's not like you're a, penny UFA who you go to the cup and now you can ask 20% more. Like, I think everyone wants a cup, and I get that. But if you've got one, outside of just the professional, wow, wouldn't it be neat to have a second one? I think you're really balancing that where I play and how they treat me and how my family feels versus why do I want another cup?
Yeah, for sure.
And I think those are a lot of things too. And this is a great city, and a lot of these people are embedded and have charities and, all that sort of thing here that I think is what's keeping them going. But, these guys, I don't think anybody wants to lose, but I think the players just like us probably know at some point that, what? If we don't do well, we're excited for next year, just like you and I are. And that prospect of who could come and what could come and how could that change things for us. And I think that's probably maybe not front of mind, but at least back of mind for a lot of this roster too, in terms of keeping the spirits up.
Yeah, well, you look at guys like Coronado, like Wolf, like Honzik, who are kind of like core-ish pieces for the next generation of this team. Like they're looking ahead to guys like Gradin joining them, Brustevich joining them, say Gavin McKenna or any of the other top 5 guys, depending on where the Flames actually end up finishing with their draft pick. Like airlifting one of those guys in, how Reshny and Potter are doing. Like, there's enough there where, like, there's a lot to look forward to in a year or 2 years from now for this organization. So, for those guys, like, there's a lot to look forward to, even though, like, it does really, really suck right at the moment.
And, let's be honest, all these guys are competitive. And I think part of the drive is probably keeping your spot, right? I mean, we know that we're going to start seeing more young players. We're going to see the Kuznetsovs brought up, which we already have. And I would imagine 1 or 2 of the forwards start to come up. I mean, Honzig has a spot in the lineup. Like, I think there's 2 things here. There's the competitiveness of keeping your spot and also kind of the do unto others piece. When these players were young players, there was some veteran guy who took them under their wing. And I think in some cases it's your turn now.
Yeah, much like when Kadri first came up, like Phil Kessel was kind of the veteran guy that helped show him the ropes quite a bit.
Thankfully didn't show him diet.
Yeah, well, how many hot dogs later?
And Diet Cokes.
Yeah. It's one of those things that the situation is not easy for anybody in the organization.
And I mean, Matt, you probably see this too. As we get older, we get more stuck in our ways. We don't like new things as much. And I have to imagine there's something to be said too. If you're Blake Coleman or Nazem Kadri or, Anderson or Huberto or any of these veterans that I know Calgary, I know the staff, I know the people, I know the city. Do I really want to go somewhere new? Like, and outweigh that benefit of a new lineup, a new roster, a new city. Like, what I have here is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I'm used to it. And that's got to be part of it too. But it's an interesting question I'll ask, and I don't think any of us really have the answer. And I think, as the season goes on, I still think the Flames think they can pull the nose up on this one to some extent. And I think, Al, this is a question maybe we'll revisit around Christmas time if it looks like, and we're seeing reports that the locker room morale is just terrible and things like that. I think, Matt, that's probably everything that we've got for this last week of Flames hockey. Are there any other stories that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, just looking at the Flames conference standings to go along with the West. The 8th place Utah Mammoth now are just 2 points shy of having twice as many as the Flames. So it's going to take a lot for this team to come back. So
it is.
Not an easy road for this team.
No, and I think, we have to reframe this season, as you and I have talked about before. And you know what? Yes, the Flames maybe aren't going to get the points we want, but if we look at some of what we're seeing, I think we're seeing Frost and Farabee come on really well. I think we're seeing the emergence of a player like Klapka as an NHLer. Like, I think there's other stories that as Flames fans we can be excited about and talk about as, wow, that was the good of this season, even if it's not the scoreboard every night. I think as Flames fans, those are the things we have to start talking about and looking at and celebrating.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
2 guys the Flames got virtually for free, and I think both looking like core pieces for this team, in Farabee and Frost, for example. So, I think there's a lot of stories here. We're just going to have to start uncovering them, and you and I think we'll shift focus and start to talk about some of those things as well. But with that, let's look at our weekly predictions. Last week, I predicted that we would win Chicago and Minnesota and lose to Columbus, so we were pretty much the exact opposite. You thought the Flames would win to Chicago, lose Columbus and Minnesota, so neither of us gets the predictions right. This week, the Flames have 3 games in the docket. Tuesday night, they have their second game of their two-game road swing in St. Louis. They've already played St. Louis this year and lost 4-3. And then their first match of the year against the San Jose Sharks back in Calgary on Thursday night at 7 p.m. And then also the 15th Saturday Hockey Night in Canada, an 8 p.m. start time as the Flames take on the Winnipeg Jets. And that'll be their, second meeting of the year, I believe?
Yes.
What are you thinking for this week, Matt?
I'm going to be Captain Optimistic and say 0 wins.
I had the same. I think I think this is the week that St. Louis should be beatable, right? They're the team right above the Flames. They should be beatable. I don't think the Flames are going to do it. And I think the Flames are at a point now where this has got to be getting in their head, too, that they're losing. And sometimes, when you're losing, you try too hard to win. I think that's what we might see against St. Louis.
Well, and on top of it, for whatever reason, the Flames have really been terrible in St. Louis's arena. I remember last year, that 2-game back-to-back in January.
Yeah, it was weird.
And, they lost them both where, if they had got a point out of that, they made the playoffs. But, it's one of those where, even going back, the last 5 years, they have just always seemed to have struggled in St. Louis for whatever reason. I don't see that stopping, and if the Flames couldn't handle Bedard, I don't see them handling Celebrini any better.
Well, and it's not just Celebrini. Chicago is Bedard. I think that personally, I think that the Sharks have more to their roster than just Celebrini.
Oh, yes. They have Smith and Askarov and a whole bunch of other
even
things.
Toffoli. They're up in the standings where they are because they've put together a pretty decent roster there. I mean, Jeff Skinner's on their third line. He's a bona fide NHLer. Adam Gaudette, Barclay Gaudreau. This is a decent team, and I think it's a model for what the Flames could be in a couple of years if they can get a few of those kind of pieces. But, I think that's going to be a tough one for the Flames. I think that the Sharks are a better team this year than they were last year, and then a lot of people are going to give them credit for.
Yep. And Winnipeg being Winnipeg, even at the best of times, the Flames have a hard time against them. So
if you can't beat the bad guys, you're not going to beat the good guys, right?
Yeah.
Winnipeg is a good team with a good goalie.
Yep. So a lot of fun to look forward to.
Do you see Devin Cooley in net this week?
I probably would say no, even though he should. Realistically, the game that would make the most sense is the road game, but because he just played, I don't think it makes sense to put him in again. Realistically, you probably don't see Cooley again until the Chicago game on the 18th, and go from there.
Yeah, and I mean, they've got a back-to-back there, Chicago-Buffalo. I think you could do either one of them.
Yeah.
I think at this point, you pretty much have to find a way to get Cooley in once a week.
Yeah.
Minimum. I mean, he's looking good in every appearance we're seeing, whether it's starting or relief. You've got to let him ride that. And they're going to run out of crappy teams to play, but as you see often with the crappy teams, other teams play their backup against them. So I think, maybe those are the nights when, let's say, Calgary on the 28th goes to Florida and Florida plays the backup. Maybe you put Cooley in to match that.
Yeah, it's one of those where I think we're going to be seeing a lot of odd lineups just from like opposing teams and ourselves even. As you said, trying to match up perhaps like backup v backup. Like especially if the losses continue, I think that you'll see more of an even distribution between Wolf and Cooley. Like heading into December, I think they're still leaning on Wolf primarily just because of the fact that, trying to keep their head above water, even though it's not really helping.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got to see what you got in Cooley. As we talked about last week, he hasn't played a lot of games, and he might be good, he might not be, we need to see. But you're right, the one that makes the most sense here is the St. Louis game. If I was the coach, I would consider putting him in 2 games in a row because I thought he looked good tonight, but I'm not sure that's the way they're going to go.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see next week if we see him or not, but I think this is going to be a rough week as Flames fans.
Well, it's been rough thus far, so what's a little more?
I mean, it's one thing to get beaten by a good team, like, all LOL Edmonton, 9-1 against the Avalanche, right? But, like, it's when you're getting beat by Chicago and St. Louis, that's where it really starts to sting. Like, you guys got to find a way to beat those teams.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, it's gotten to the point myself personally where, if the Flames lose, it's like, fine, whatever. It's not great to be in a position where, like, you're 32nd, but, as long as they get something good out of this, via the draft, it'll make it all worth it.
It's an investment.
Yeah. Exactly. And like it sucks for the short term, but the last time like the Flames were nearly this bad, we ended up with a Matthew Tkachuk, a Sam Bennett, a Sean Monahan, and like those guys were core pieces of this team until they weren't. And like if certain things broke a different way, the Flames might have been a cup contender over the last few years. Things didn't shake out that way, but, we saw Bennett and Tkachuk become 2 of the key pieces to the Panthers winning back-to-back Stanley Cups. So, you only get those players by having a bad year. And, you just gotta endure the fun while it is and, look ahead to when things will be better.
Yeah, it's just, like you said, it'll come. We just need to look at this as an investment year, and it might suck, but it'll be for the better in the end. We'll probably look back at this. Next week's our 400th episode, and we'll probably look back at this at episode 500 and say, "Wow, that was the year that set everything up. It was worth it."
Exactly.
So we'll talk next week and see if we still feel the same if it's worth it after probably 3 more losses. But it's easy to say now.
At least, hopefully, they score a goal between now and then. Just small improvements, like
all
not
right,
asking
so
for the.
Let's put that into our predictions. Do you think they'll score against St. Louis?
I'm not going to commit to anything at this point.
I don't know.
Hard to say. To be honest,
is.
Like they're generating lots of shots, at least. Yeah. Can't really say anything great at the moment, so we'll see. It'll make it for a very quick show if we don't.
That's true.
It'll give us lots of excuse to go down memory lane, that's for sure.
That's right. So if anyone wants to write in like Al did, let us know, because we're probably going to need something to fill next week's show with.
Yep.
All right. Well, Matt, we'll talk to you in a week, and we'll see what happens over the next 3 games.
And as always, go Flames go.
Fireside Chat is hosted by Dan Stevenson, co-hosted by Matt DeBorg. This episode produced and edited by Peter Marino. Fireside Chat is licensed under Creative Commons license. For full license details, visit firesidechat.ca.